All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Connect Spring. My name is Leana Salamah, and I'm with the International Housewares Association. And this is a Retail Renaissance, driving sales through experience. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. First off, our speakers will be taking questions at the end of the session. At any point during today's session, you can go ahead and use the Q&A function down at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit your questions, and I will gather them up and we will go through them at the end. Secondly, these sessions are being recorded and they will be available on IHA's website within about 2 weeks of the event conclusion. So that puts us right around mid-April. This session is sponsored by Jura, the innovation leader in automatic coffee machines, offering a true bean-to-cup experience that is freshly ground, not capsuled. With that, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Michelle Lamb is the founder and editorial director of The Trend Curve, and Leigh Schwarzkopf is the founder of Project Partners. Both of our speakers' full bios are available on our website at theinspiredhomeshow.com/connect. Thank you all for being here. Let's go ahead and get started.
Thanks so much, Leana. Michelle and I are so excited to be here on this, kicking off the second week of the Inspired Home Show. Can you see my screen yet?
Yes, we can.
Okay, we will get started. So today we're going to talk about all kinds of ideas. We've got a lot of things to cover, including the science and emotions as it relate to product, where to go for inspiration, how trends fit in, and we have examples to help illustrate all the above. We ask your patience and want you to recognize that we're kind of dancing on the tip of an iceberg here, and there are multiple sessions that could follow any of these topics. Our goal is to open your mind and reinforce that these guiding principles work no matter what the selling occasion is, whether it's a trade fair, you're selling online, you're selling in person, you're selling at retail. If your company is small, you need to think big, but not expensive. And if your company is big, you need to think nimble and accessible. The overarching topic today is experience. In the national consumer poll we conducted just last week with Springboard Futures and Unity Marketing, we looked at consumer shopping values, and more than 90% of people said the shopping and product experience are important. This morning, my inbox was full with more experience topics. It's hard to escape it. If you've not yet read the book, please look for the classic and recently updated Experience Economy. Pine and Gilmore talk about the added value of experience in retail transactions. They go on to say that retail is theater, not metaphorically, but literally. This holds true for wholesale as well. Products are props, employees are performers, and the selling floor, webpage, or trade show booth are the stage. Every interaction contributes to the total experience. Ipsos did a study and showed about half of the shopping we do is tactical and about half of it is experiential. That means that people are looking for aspiration when they walk into a store. They're looking for entertainment. They want to discover something unusual. And there's a big social element, which I think we're all missing right now. But I think what we all have to challenge ourselves as marketers is how to deliver the best in both areas. To get behind this topic, it's appropriate to take a peek at brain science. I'm clearly not an expert in this field, but I've been tracking the subject for several years. At Ambiente Academy a couple years ago, Akeem Fringes talked about the enormous amount of information a brain perceives. He took a piece of paper and demonstrated by folding it that there's a significant relationship between what your brain perceives, what you know, what you're interested in, and what you remember. That was a powerful illustration that really sparked my interest, but on further research, it got even more complex. According to NPR, the magic number is 11. That's 11 million. Your brain can process 11 billion bits of information per second, but your conscious mind can only handle 40 to 50. To get your arms around the scale, think about this in terms of the nearly 11 million steps to walk from Los Angeles to Cleveland compared to walking from the front of the house to the back of the house. Now couple that with all the noise we hear, couple all that noise with our increasingly short attention spans. Microsoft reports declines to about 8 seconds, and we've heard numbers as low as 2 seconds to recognize something on shelf or online. Oracle estimates that about 1/3 of consumers will walk away from a brand after just one bad experience, and over 40% will spend more with an exceptional experience. This all points to the need for being in the moment when it counts. The right time, the right products, the right places, the right displays, the right promotions, and the right experiences. If there's one takeaway from today, that's it. Remember, based on the brain science and those 11 million bits of information, interactions can be blatant or subtle, and they can speak to the conscious or unconscious mind. Get out of your head, forget your jargon and self-talk. It's not about what you make or think, it's about what your customer wants. Think of them as people, whether they shop in your store or your booth, and think about them holistically, what they capture in the front of their mind and what's subliminal. To paraphrase the immortal Maya Angelou, they will remember you for how you make them feel. And that takes us to our next topic, psychology and emotion. Kate Nightingale from Style Psychology talks about the base, the middle, and the top of what we have been seeing nearly every week for the last year, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. With our daily activities and mortality at risk, safety is a major concern. When people don't feel safe, everything implodes. Ways to counteract your safety concerns include control, offer choices, and education to help put a customer at ease. Education can be individual research, it can be reading reviews, or having other information available. Balance is another important thing, both physically and metaphorically. They do the same thing. They offer that comfort and control. It can be reflected in everything from the orientation of product on a shelf or on a website to strobes or lighting that in the wrong place or the wrong time can produce the wrong gut reaction. Nostalgia is another very important trigger as it provides comfort and a sense of peace. Things as subtle as the flow in the store or the direction of video represent innovation or nostalgia. Left to right thinking moves you forward, right to left reflects history. The second area she discussed, and I got ahead of myself on the clicks here, excuse me, is the sense of belonging. Her theory is that people don't buy products, brands, or experiences. They buy the associations with the products, brands, and experiences. Belonging is an important component and manifests itself through human interaction with owners, employees, customers, community interactions like sponsoring events on site related to your products or your service, or as Saks Fifth Avenue did, provide a voter registration location. And last but not least, brand interactions need to have personality and be responsive to your people and community. Knowledgeable salespeople, quick personal answers online, or engaging people by offering choices. A bonus is the more interactions, the more control, which reinforces that safety. An example is on the next slide. The bottom line, engaging and offering support beyond the shopping experience is critical. At the top of Maslow's pyramid is transcendence. Trust issues got real during the pandemic, as was reported in the latest Edelman Trust Survey, and people are looking to brands and retailers to help them on a higher level. It is no longer good enough to give, you must do. Support beyond the buying experience and being both accountable and authentic enter into the buying equation more than ever before. According to the survey we did with Springboard Futures, 97.5% of respondents consider trust important, and more than 75% identified it as very or extremely important. This was second only to quality and notably before price in the 17 measures we reviewed. Sustainability is one area of transcendence, along with D&I, that is on the news right now. 90% of consumers feel it is an important topic when making purchase decisions, and there is much data that the current and future Housewares purchasers are the loudest advocates, and they vote with their pocketbooks. Social responsibility can be a part of your recovery plan for both sales and recruitment. People remember who stepped up to lead. Hartman talks about it as a mandate. Forbes talks about thinking of it from the point of view of your audience and employees to identify what areas to support. All sources warn of your need to be authentic. I've seen research that you can be almost anywhere in your journey, just starting out or well on your way. And if you are transparent and authentic, you will be rewarded. Williams-Sonoma went the extra mile to give a survey to their customers recently on what is important to them. They can then tailor their activities, bringing the control we discussed. My last note on this section refers to a body of work by the German sales trainer Katrine Gugli. Through a fantastic series of stories and metaphors, her message distills to thinking about your customers or consumers as people first. Recognize that most purchases are emotional. She estimates 80% of those are emotional, and we look to rationalize them after the fact. You should work towards making people happy. This really resonated because you shouldn't just look to satisfy. That leads to mediocrity. And this is another critical takeaway. Who wants to be mediocre when you can help people be happy? Reach out if you want more on her story. I promise it's worth it. Todd Mirable, who is co-sponsor of this event and provided several bits of content last week and this week coming up. He says, your customers are no longer happy that you get them. They want you to be them. Not only understand what makes them tick, but participate in their life. So what are some sources of inspiration to get to consumers at the right time and place? Inspiration really comes from everywhere. Trade and consumer news, popular culture, your customers, your customer service agents, your competitors, try to tap into it all. For today's purposes, we've identified several areas relevant to the housewares industry. I will start with a couple of clearly aligned topics. First, the obvious, increased cooking and baking. The rise in cooking and baking from home inspires cookware, baking, and gadget innovation. With over half of people cooking more than ever before and nearly as many baking, they need equipment. The housewares industry has had a banner year, as was discussed last week by Joe Darashowski from NPD. Most forecasters believe this will continue, and that when people can go back to restaurants more, they will. But instead of ordering as much takeout or delivery, they will continue to cook and bake and do it with friends. McKinsey's report, The Next Normal, from January of 2021, discusses this as a year of transition. It will set the tone for the future. It's incumbent on the housewares industry to offer solutions that resonate on all levels with the people that buy their products and reinforce the stickiness of the cooking at home trend. 1 year into COVID, conventional wisdom holds that it will remain a staple of everyday life. Consumer market research firm Hunter surveyed adults in December, and it was revealed that 71% plan to continue cooking at home post-pandemic. The reasons are varied. 67% want to save money, over 50% want to eat healthier, the same amount want to feel good. But one of the most interesting findings was that the cooking continues to spark joy. 81% of respondents said they're cooking more because they find it so enjoyable. Food experts Data Central cite that various global cuisines are on the rise and they're really being desired. There's pent-up demand. So perhaps additional emphasis on tools and gadgets will help drive the next generation of sales. Another noticeably clear connection is the exercising at home phenomenon. Water bottles, equipment, and things to make the workout space clean and clear and promote airflow are here to stay. My yoga teacher once told me that non-stick shelf liners make great yoga mats in a pinch. And I wouldn't use them interchangeably, but it's a great example of a non-traditional use of a housewares project. Keep the blinders off. The Washington Post says, not since the Great Declutter, inspired by Marie Kondo, have people been so inspired to edit junk out of their homes. We've seen a parallel lift in storage and organization needs. This is the last obvious source of inspiration I will mention. Multifunctional, collapsible, and other items to help reduce clutter, distraction, and chaos are very important. This leads to calm and a sense of control in an otherwise chaotic life at home. Prior to the pandemic, sales of storage was forecasted to be more than 2.5 billion. Look for continued and robust growth provided that design and functionality needs can be met. With that, I'm going to now pass this along to Michelle. She's going to talk about some of the other sources of inspiration and how they apply to housewares.
Thanks, Leanne. We're going to start with the topic of working from home. From the earliest days of the pandemic, everyone realized how essential a pleasant and comfortable workspace is to efficiency, productivity, and creativity. Those factors are still top of mind, in fact, even more so since the number of consumers working permanently from home is expected to double this year. A Gartner CFO survey says 74% of companies plan to permanently shift to remote work post-COVID. So no wonder Zonda, formerly Myers Research, which specializes in new home data, reports that a top ask from prospective home buyers is for not one, but 2 home office spaces. So the first space is more traditional. It's a dedicated room or a loft or a bonus room. But the second office is really interesting. It's much smaller. It's typically an underutilized space that might be in a nook or under the stairs or maybe even in a closet. Furniture companies are already providing furniture to fit these unconventional spaces. Well, regardless of size, consumers are inspired to kit out their offices in ways that go beyond tech and furniture, which you would expect. And that's why Housewares items are popping up on everybody's list of work from home essentials. So CNN recommends starting the day with a good breakfast, so a sandwich maker is on their list. CNET says making coffee has become a sacramental practice. I love that term when you work from home. And they like this hot and cold option. To go with it, Cosmos suggests a stylish mug. The New York Times says a white noise machine takes up very little space, but makes a huge difference in being able to concentrate when you have kids and pets in the house. Refinery 29 likes diffusers. New York Magazine's list includes this aesthetically pleasing humidifier. Wired magazine says a water bottle to help you stay hydrated is an absolute essential. Plants have actually appeared on too many lists to count. So in addition to being attractive, they help you to clean the air, connecting plants with the wellness trend. COVID-19 has made clean air an even bigger priority, so no wonder the air purifier category has been supercharged. So the bottom line is that many Housewares products have legitimate work from home connections that consumers care about in ways they never really have before. And they'll continue to do so as many families are actually moving house now in search of better permanent office space there. So don't be afraid to exploit these connections in your sales pitch, in your POP, in your packaging, all of that at least through 2022. Since many homes lack space for even a pocket office, or maybe the family needs multiple workspaces, the dining room table has remained the go-to surface. But dining tables are getting an even bigger workout lately, the likes we haven't seen in years, and it's happening at meal times. That's because the grab and go mentality has taken a nosedive during the pandemic. Kids who were eating a granola bar on the drive to school are now sitting down with their parents to start their day. And adults who once cooked for entertainment are making 3 meals a day like it's their job. As a result of these new behaviors, we have already heard that dining furniture is selling well with more chairs per table than in the past. According to 2021 predictive trends from Meredith, there's a 185% year-over-year increase in online searches for the term dining room set through May of last year, and a 73% increase in searches for kitchen table. Table Magazine and Springboard Futures asked subscribers across the country, when it's just family or household members at mealtime, which is most usual? 71% of them responded eating at a dining room or kitchen table. Tabletop sales during the pandemic offer a window into the new importance of eating at home. From April 2020 to January 2021, Housewares dinnerware increased by 25%. Casual flatware was up 19%, and casual beverageware had a 17% increase, and this is all according to NPD. Vendors are also confirming that dinnerware sales are benefiting from the pandemic. At Lifetime Brands, tableware is seeing what they characterized as real gains, including online sales. Crew credits COVID behavioral shifts for some of their rapid growth. They say 16-piece sets, that's a dinner, a salad, and 2 different bowls are key for them. Villeroy and Bach says it's all about sets when it comes to dinnerware, including this, which is a bestseller for them. Nonetheless, NPD calls open stock a main driver of sales. And in a national survey conducted by Springboard Futures and Project Partners Network, 76% of respondents said they'd like to purchase products outside of a set. The tide is definitely turning toward customization of pieces and patterns and quality, and the time to prepare for this sea change is right now. Of course, dining tables are also for entertaining, or at least they were before COVID appeared. Just last month, Date Essential asked consumers what they're most excited to do when restrictions ease, and 56% said meeting family or friends at someone's house. So remember, we're all coming back. Knowing that, for millennials especially, meal prep and cooking with guests has been part of the evening's entertainment. We anticipate a return to this behavior, but maybe with some sharper skills. Consumers have been honing new techniques and new recipes. Millennials are content driven, so brands that give them recipes and ideas and how-tos are really reaping the rewards. And this is according to Tom Mirabile at Springboard Futures. Companies that don't have original content, but maybe they're curators and trusted advisors, are also doing well. Today, skills are being shared with family. Later this year, we hope, we'll be sharing with friends again. As the entire meal experience returns to the status of entertainment, it's going to trigger a revival of colored spoons and spatulas and interesting bakeware and professional quality pans. For now, however, anyone who comes over at all is likely to be shown to the outdoors. That's where we're socializing. Nearly 3 in 5 Americans now use their patios for socializing with family and friends, and this is according to a just released survey by ICFA, the International Casual Furnishings Association. It's a great survey. If you want to get your hands on it, just send me a note after this and I'll make sure it comes to you. So with the pandemic keeping all of us at home, 90% of Americans say their outdoor living space is more valuable than ever, and 51% of us are cooking outdoors. Last November, as the reality of a COVID winter set in, how to keep spending time in the safer outdoors was a hot topic. The Wall Street Journal was just one publication highlighting the innovative ways in which consumers have extended the outdoor season. A Kelton global survey for Bed Bath & Beyond found that 23% of consumers were planning an outdoor holiday celebration in 2020. And in October of last year, Pinterest searches for outdoor Thanksgiving increased by 139%. Beyond patio furniture, the demand for outdoor heating and outdoor lighting went into overdrive. Bed Bath, for example, saw an uptick in outdoor cooking, lighting, and gardening tools, as well as furniture. So with so much focus on outdoor spaces, their status has risen to that of outdoor rooms. And that means consumers are approaching these open air spaces with the same eye toward trend that they're applying when they decorate inside. This gives outdoor decor many new opportunities for growth in categories like unbreakable tableware, anything for grilling, bars, rugs, textiles. The key is to design palettes and patterns for these items as though they were meant for inside the home.
A foundation of any experience is brand. Consistent messaging across all points of interaction is critical. This applies across the landscape from retail to wholesale. As a licensing person, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that area of brand extension. In the nearly $300 billion licensing industry, over $35 billion is licensed housewares. Certainly, borrowing or lending brands relevant to housewares to get farther faster is worth the time it would take to explore if you're not already. Omnichannel, or as or as Forbes put, it's harmonized. Retail and branding is what we want to focus on now for a moment. This again could be several sessions, but we want to call out a few things. It may seem daunting, but no matter what your size, you need to consider. Forgetting that 90% of people expect omnichannel now, Google says over 98% of Americans switch between devices every day. Marketing Week says more than half regularly use 4 touch points, with 6 as the average. Zendesk reports 87% think retail experience needs to be more seamless, and the Aberdeen Group estimates that companies with strong omni-channel engagement retain 89% of their customers, compared with the 33% who don't. Google goes on to estimate that 30% higher lifetime values can be expected from those customers rather than one-channel customers. Le Creuset did a great job of harmonizing their branding across retail and social this past Valentine's Day. We actually tried to get pictures in store, but they sold out everywhere we could find. The queen, though, of branding in my mind is Peggy Portion. Whether you're at her Chelsea or a Belgravia store in London, you know you're there. When you go inside, you know you're there. When you're looking at products that she sells for you to make at home or gifting, the Peggy Portion branding comes through. Crate & Barrel did a great job also with their very clean lines and unstructured displays, but we like the way they did this both online, in store, and in their social media. With your branding, details matter. If you say you're going to be open, you need to be open. If you say you're in stock, you need to be in stock. You might say, what does this have to do with branding? But it's all about that customer experience. Keep in mind the last few feet are also critical, and especially in a world where we're doing curbside pickup more and more, and it's expected to continue, make sure there's clean and clear call outs of what you're offering. Here, the kitchen window does curbside pickup at this particular time, and they'll even give you free parking with a certain amount of a certain size purchase. But why not even make it fun? Have Santa or the Easter Bunny deliver the product. And we love Briar Grove Pharmacy's motto, which is creating friends since 1968. And we want to be their friends if this is how they treat people. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle.
And we're going to talk about trend for a little bit. You know, when I first started in trend, the idea of applying a trend filter to home interiors was completely new. Today, everyone understands the power of trend, which is why the word trend is applied so liberally, but it isn't always applied accurately. That's a little bit trickier. Everything that sells well isn't a trend. In fact, if an item sells well day in, day out, it's probably core and not trend. Sales of trend products usually follow a bell curve shape, rising and falling at a steady clip over the course of about 2.5 or 3 years. And the stages along the way, the steps along that bell curve can be predicted and tracked. And that's why this bell curve is such a valuable tool for managing demand and inventory once you know where you live on that bell curve. So here's another difference. Core products are a pretty safe bet, while trend items carry more risk. That's why trend assortments are often assigned higher gross margin and turnover goals. Core products are foundational. Consumers add to them over time, so they want to see them on the shelf every visit. These stalwarts represent more SKUs and more total dollars. Trend items are more topical. They're exciting and they're engaging in a way that creates experience for shoppers. Trend assortments have a halo effect that impacts core items too. And that's why they play a key role in establishing a company's image and their identity. Just as important, they are essential for differentiating one retailer from another. All this makes trend indispensable. But how much trend do you really need to make that image statement? If trend and risk are interchangeable terms, how much risk can you afford? To answer this question, it's important to have a really clear idea of the nature of your category as well as shopper expectations. What do I mean about those expectations? Well, if you focus on back to college products, for example, you want a higher commitment to trend. When your customer sees you as the go-to place for classics, and that's a good thing, then your trend assortment should be smaller. Since trend and core have different responsibilities, I'm going to recommend that you consider them separately. And by doing so, I'm not suggesting that they don't relate to each other. They should, and when they do, both are more productive. But instead, think of them as two pieces of the same pie. If you're just starting out, or maybe you're established, but you don't have a strategic plan outlining the balance between trend and core, which, by the way, I think you should, the best place to start is actually around 20% of the pie for trend, generally building toward a goal of 30 to 35% for trend is right on point. Now, you may be wondering, when it comes to trend, which one's more important, color or pattern? Sounds like a trick question, but the answer is easy, and it's color. It's always color. After your light source, color is the most important aspect of any product, any web page, any display. Consumers will compromise on pattern. They will rarely, if ever, compromise on color. Now, as COVID's grip and our optimism because of the release start to join forces, color's actually making a comeback, sometimes in unexpected places. For example, at the designer level, we are seeing more colored cabinets than we've ever seen before. Ditto major appliances. More color than at any time in memory. Of course, small electrics have embraced color for years, but now their bigger siblings are doing it too, and that's significant. Optimism is also impacting glass, with kitchen pendants embracing colorful personalities that are fresh and light, clean and modern. These are not Tiffany lamps. And then in smaller items, Villeroy & Boch has revealed that their Boston colored drinkware is up about 90% year to date. Color is impacting cookware too, and this is according to our friends at the Cookware Manufacturers Association. CMA says that while colored interiors for cookware have declined, colored exteriors and accents like handles are now a factor in about 30% of the cookware sold. Red continues to dominate, blues are rising. I'm keeping my eye, however, on bronze colors, and you'll know why in just a second. You know, color always catches the eye. Just adding a fresh or an unexpected hue to an assortment can generate new interest and sales. And that's that halo effect that I just mentioned, because it has a radiating effect, even apart from the exact item or the exact collection. So, case in point. Over a year ago, we identified emerging browns as the trend replacement for established grays. Today, browns are everywhere in multiple categories and price points, and we expect them to build well into 2022. Greens are trending, especially the newest versions, which are bright. We've got some fun neons popping up, or maybe they're warm. And greens with a mid-tone character can be found in a palette inspired by mineral colors that is rising and rising fast for 2021 and 2022. With echoes of nature that are familiar and updated at the same time, these mineral colors will represent the most important color trend direction for the next 18 months. Studies reveal that people make a subconscious judgment about a product within about 90 seconds, and up to 90% of that assessment is based on color alone. So, is pattern important to trend? Yes, absolutely. And so are textures, and so are materials. And that said, the visceral and immediate reaction that humans have to color means that shoppers will never get to any other aspect of product if the color isn't right. Once the color is set, the rest of the trend story can go on. So here are a few trends to keep in mind over the next 18 to 24 months. These are not the only trends, but these are 3 that I think are at a point in time where everyone on this call will have enough of an opportunity to exploit them. The first is Japandi. This is a trend that Pinterest refers to as the new minimalism. It's a soft, contemporary, global trend, and it has dual roots. Half are in the Scandinavian simplicity that's been embraced for several years. We know that well. And half are from the Japanese rustic minimalism that emerged about 2 years ago and has been gaining traction. Think Eastern wabi-sabi meets Nordic hygge. Japandi focuses on clean lines, simple forms, fascinating surfaces, natural materials, efficient functionality. Palettes are peaceful and tranquil, but they often have just one little considered bright accent thrown in. This trend ticks so many boxes: sustainability, comforting textures, plenty of breathing room. Consumers are finding the quest for purity seen in Scandinavian style and the Japanese wabi-sabi sensibility in which beauty is found in imperfection. Well, they're finding that these 2 things complement one another perfectly. We expect Japandi to build for the coming 2 years to become a very strong global trend. Our next style is the heir to farmhouse. It's cottagecore. This is a trend that celebrates simpler times. It embraces harmony with nature and the purity of outdoors, emphasizing escapism from the modern world and the comfort of home. That sounds like exactly what we've all been doing for the last year. And it's trending. On the day I checked Instagram just a couple of days ago, there were over 1,500,000 posts with the cottagecore tag. Cottagecore is decidedly romantic, bordering on pastoral fantasy, and it's nostalgic. There are vintage references that make this the closest thing we've seen to a return of 1980s country looks so far. That includes an intentional lack of technology. Flowers dominate here, not just in pattern, but also in form. Leaves also play a part. So do fruits and vegetables. And by the way, another touch point with the 80s here is keep the scale smaller. That's what's directional here. Materials reinforce the natural connection with unfinished wood and bamboo and stone and definitely natural fibers. Relief, ceramics, and tins add to that retro sensibility. Cottagecore is for every consumer that values a front porch lifestyle. Our forecast is that cottagecore could engage somewhere around 35% of consumers by the time 2023 arrives. Our last trend tells us it's time for extremes to join together. That's the vision of contemporary contrast. In this style, we have rounded and bulbous forms, and they're juxtaposed with features that are so thin as to be characterized as skinny. This can happen in a single piece or in items that are used together. Although it's a cleaned up look, contemporary contrast really isn't harsh. It's just not possible when you have shapes that border on swollen. Baskets and bowls swoop up wide from the base. Handles are chubby. Radiused edges terminate in flat planes in a thick and thin message that is core. Simplicity informs shapes and surfaces, making embellishments either rare or modest, like the leather strap you see here. Mixed media features bold fields and a blocked effect that can loosely be described as pattern. Any pattern we see here, well, there just aren't many of them, and they're used judiciously. More important are visual and tactile textures, natural wood grains, marble swirls, matte metals. This trend loves glass, not snobbishly. It likes plastics that avoid too much shine. Ceramics look almost plain, and concrete works as an accent sometimes acid washed. Contemporary contrast is the perfect way for those who love cleaned up style to also feel comforted by soft elements and embraced by rounded forms. The feeling of safety it conveys is a perfect match for today's COVID-induced emotions. We believe that this style can actually help us heal as we emerge from the pandemic. Back to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Michelle. We're going to close our presentation today by taking a step back and looking at some practical thoughts on experience. Keeping in mind the toolkit you have of trend, color, as Michelle's been talking about. We'll talk a little bit about display, signage, the ambiance in the room, utilizing underutilized space, lighting, and windows. We will go through all the different steps to winning displays, and with that, I will get into some great examples that Michelle and I have, with great pain, winnowed down to share with you today. And I say that not metaphorically, literally. We had so many great options to include. The first thing we want to talk about is identifying your space, and it could be cutting into a wall that would otherwise be used for just signage, as Selfridges did here, and they also took advantage of puns, time to petrify instead of just time to party. And we love the way that Schiphol Airport Duty Free Shop put a little selfie station in the front of the entrance so that you could take advantage of what they had to offer and share that experience with your friends and loved ones at home. We also love the way these stores have taken underutilized space, such as around the escalator or between the escalators or even out in front of the store, and filled that with product and inspiring ideas. Choosing your fixtures is another key thing to do. Certainly having a seasonal fixture that immediately communicates what's going on and what season it is and is shoppable from all sides is a moral imperative, I will say. But incorporating mannequins and ladders and other inexpensive fixtures to help create the story is also a really great way to move your product forward. Inviting into your home, like Target does here with their Hearth in Hand, to see new products, or as Villeroy and Boch did at their booth, reminiscing about a picnic and taking a bike out into the pasture to spend time with friends. Those are great ways to just inspire the people that are looking to buy your product. We also think creating a focal point is critical. Walking into the Bon Marché and seeing this great display with the truck that's kitted out to depending on the season and what the theme, but they also do a great job of incorporating architectural elements like the pole that would otherwise be underutilized space. Picking a theme and carrying it through the store like they did on the left, creating that little jump into hyperspace from the Star Wars experience, or a modular display that you can just, again, refresh based on the season or the theme you want to do. That helps you get the customer in the frame of mind to listen to what you're trying to do. I love the way color is used here, both in a trade show and a grocery environment, showing that you can not only use it as a kind of an artistic element, but you can monetize products that are meant to sell as well. Love the way people are using levels here, Avoca in store, everything from the floor to the ceiling by using wire spools and tables and even the landing, to go home at their trade show booth where they incorporated books in the ceiling display to capture your attention. This example here, the one on the left, is a rug actually, and we're seeing more and more attention being paid on capturing consumer eyes on the floor level as well as the wall and the ceiling, but the floor level is particularly interesting. Tom Mirable reminded me last week that boomers and Gen Y tend to look at a 90-degree angle forward as they're walking, but younger folks are looking down at a 45-degree angle, and that's why the real estate is becoming so valuable on the floor. Coca-Cola is paying attention to that, and you probably should too. Levels don't always have to be on the shelf. They can be inside the display. Love this example here where when you peek in the display, which looks like it is sold out, they send you to another area in the store. how cool would that be if there was a QR code where you could order an out of stock item? We think that would be fabulous. I love the bookshelf design here. Put your imagination, just let your imagination soar, mixing and matching patterns. And that does a great job of communicating all the different choices that you're trying to represent to your buyer. Telling a story, one of my favorites, everything you could possibly need for a pet. This is a great example from Palomar, where in an environment where they had all different kinds of maps, they showed their brand new water bottle, which had, as you can see on the left, the cities on it, and then engraved on the item itself, it told you where in the city you could fill that water bottle for free. So kind of creating that whole, I want to take care of the sustainability, but I want to be cool and hip and interesting. I just love the way that told a story at retail. Of course, you can tell a story when you're talking to different skill levels, as Berkman did here, everything you need for novice and all the way up to experienced bakers. And then we think incorporating and integrating your POP in what you're doing is also very important. Amazon is a master of that, both online and in store. Bookstores in general do a great job of that. But here's a great example of a Housewares display where they created a neighborhood solution for everything you need to do some baking with your family. Can't go anywhere without hearing and seeing charcuterie boards of all shapes and sizes. This example here was from Savannah Bee at a recent trade show where they put on display not only the little, the things you could nibble and taste, but then they gave you a little how-to brochure that you could put in your store so you could recreate it and then your customer could recreate it at home as well. Creating that immersive experience is not only about stores and trade show floors, it's about your online booth experience. Here we love the way they created this online portal where you could knock on the door and walk through at a 360 degree viewpoint of everything they had for show, in the booth. The immersive experience can be a way to collaborate with other brands and extend your footprint and offer more solutions to customers. It should also be something that you takes advantage of other senses, like when Liberty of London infuses the air with a holiday scent. We also love the way you can use projection in a booth, in your store, in a window. And that's a very inexpensive way to capture something, as they did here in Beverly Hills with their holiday assortment. That experience can be high-end, like Louis Vuitton at Galerie Lafayette, can also be in a trade show where you create a little miniature experience. But having that immersion is something that we think is critical going forward, and it's not something that's going to go away. To tie it all together, our key takeaways are: be there where and when it matters. That's the number one thing to think about in an environment where people are inundated with so much noise and clutter in their lives. Know your customers, speak to their evolving needs as people, be them, don't just understand them. Experience can take many shapes, and it doesn't need to break the bank. You get inspiration from listening and learning. Hold yourself accountable, be authentic, lead with trend. Showcase it in everything you do, both overtly and covertly, and look to go past satisfaction. Look for happy to truly connect. And this is how you can contact us with any further questions. And without further ado, we'll turn it back over to you, Leana. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. That was wonderful. And I have to say, all of those examples are just, they are absolutely joyous, getting to look at all of those and look through all the different creative ways that folks are using their space. For everyone on this session, I do want to remind all of you that this session is being recorded and we will be posting on our website in a couple weeks here. So all of those examples will be available to you via the session recording coming up, and we'll send out emails once these recordings are live. We do have a couple questions. I've been trying to kind of curate based on where they fell in the presentation. Let's kind of start closer to the end. Michelle, with some of what you were talking about with the three trends with, I may mispronounce this, Japandi, cottagecore, and contemporary contrast. Couple questions related to, well, one question was, where do you think that those three are on your trend bell curve? And related to that, you mentioned that cottagecore in particular could command up to 35% of consumers by 2023. Any thoughts to that end on the other two?
Well, cottagecore is probably the most mainstream of the three of them, and that's why it gets such high marks. Contemporary contrast is a subset of contemporary. And when we look at contemporary, we know that back when mid-century modern was the dominant contemporary trend, we had gone way beyond the market share that contemporary had ever achieved over the too many years that it's been tracked. And that was 25%. So for contemporary contrast, sorry, rewind. So we have come down a little bit as we see more tradition and even a little bit of formality working into assortment. So we've come down, say, from 25% to 20% for contemporary as a whole. And I think contemporary contrast will be about 10%, about half of the contemporary business. It was a long answer, sorry about that. But I will say that cottagecore and that sort of look is the most mainstream look out there. That's going to have the largest share of anything. And for Japandi, that's a subset of global. There's another trend out there called elemental, which is a global trend that will have a slightly higher share. And so global altogether will be about 18%. And we think that Japandi can be at least half of that, if not more.
It's interesting, Michelle, when you talk about Japandi and cottagecore, especially, they come across, they enter into that need for control and chaos, and in very different ways. One is a little more cluttered and DIY, and the other is just very clean and clear. And I want to, release this all from my mind. It's just fascinating the way that plays out.
Well, and how they play off one another, because when you think of the look of Japandi, it's calm and serene, and in terms of surfaces, relatively plain when it comes to surface design. Really, texture takes the lead there more than anything else. And then you get into cottagecore, and you better have some florals, and they better be small scale. And when you start packing them in like that, then you have more pattern per square foot than we've seen in a really long time. It's interesting that we're not saying one size fits all with these trends. It doesn't. I think if there's one thing we've discovered during our year of isolation and lockdown and self-review is we are who we are, and we like what we like. And we're going to continue to decorate that. So is trend important? Yes, but that trend better exist within the universe of the style that is important to me, that makes me feel good and helps me feel like I can be comforted and safe, as well as trend right.
You talked about, I'm sorry, I'm taking all your questions away, but I love having this, even though I talk to Michelle all the time, it's great to have this forum with her. You mentioned the jabs of color in the Japandi thing. Would you see jabs of cottagecore in the Japandi too, then, for that exact reason?
My first response was to say it's not quite as firm a fit as something else might be. But on the other hand, I know that back when I first started in the world of trend, the word eclectic was completely new, and it meant taking one unexpected pattern or item and putting it into an otherwise matched room setting, and poof, it was eclectic. But now eclectic is mixing styles and patterns, and what I'll say is, if you like it, it's perfect. We'll see it.
Yeah. Related to trend, you talked about, core and trend, and
Yes.
question came up, is trend more important to some housewares product categories, whereas others are really going to live in that core space?
Trend is more important to every housewares category, but it's not alone. Here again, we have a situation where we're not saying either this or that, because the basics, the core, as I said, this is more SKUs and more dollars, but you know what sells it? It's the trend. So that's what catches the eye. That's what drives us forward. And someone may come in for the trend piece and buy one, but continue to buy the core. You can't have one without the other. And I'm afraid I'm dating myself here, but there was a term back too many years ago to count that was the sizzle that sells the steak. And this was a term before trend had really been introduced into home deck and home products. But that's exactly what trend is. So even if you have a utility item, do something fun with the handle. There are really low risk ways to incorporate trend. Sorry, Leanne.
No, I'm going to say that your point is so well regarded for not only retail, but for a trade show booth or a manufacturer as well, because I think you get buyers coming to your place because they know you have the trend, and while they're there in an age of SKU rationalization or vendor rationalization, they're going to buy the people that can give them both. They're not going to split their purchase.
And it's part of the storytelling, part of the differentiation, whether you're a retailer or a manufacturer, whether it's a trade show booth on your website or in store. Those trend pieces are what differentiate you from everybody else.
Okay, backing up a little bit further into the presentation, where there was a conversation about how people are using their homes right now, in this past year. And one of our attendees noted that while I think it was 71% of folks were eating at the dining room table, there was a 28%, something like that, eating in the living room. And question came up about how can furniture or housewares manufacturers be thinking about accommodating meals being taken in a living room environment.
Leanne, would you like me to take that one?
I would.
The first and biggest answer is just get some bowls. Do 5 kinds of bowls, do 8 kinds of bowls, but also shape is interesting. And typically when the economy is really good, there's more shape for things like dinnerware. And when it contracts, there's less exploration there. I think it's time to start exploring again. What about a beautiful shape or form that would allow you to hold the plate in your hand without the plate looking awkward or without having a thumb hole in it or something like that? So I think that's one way.
Are you seeing tables? Are you seeing tables in the living room too, Michelle?
Definitely the C-shaped tables. Do you know which ones I mean? They're the ones that, they go like this, and they're little pull-up tables, and they were originally developed so we could have our portable technology next to us and in front of us, but now they're just about eating. Everybody's having their meal on those. But if you happen to be one of the people that is in that business with the tables, I'd like to know why none of them have a cup holder. That way you can have more of your dinnerware, your actual dinnerware on the table. Or
Great
if
idea.
you have 2 beverages, they fit, because these old tables, they don't have a lot of square footage to them on the top. The other thing I just want to remind people of is we don't all have new homes. But since the end of the 1990s, all the new homes being built had great rooms. Now we're beginning to hear some rumblings about closing off more spaces because of our need for more office and school spaces and things like that within the home. So we're going to see a few more doors and walls being erected in the next couple of years. Maybe even in the next decade. But for now, we have a lot of those open spaces where the dining table actually is in front of the television or in the great room. It's all the same space.
And then just a couple questions that have popped up about, we talked a lot about some of what's been popular because of the habits that folks are engaging in right now, whether that's more entertaining outdoors, whether that's, working at the dining room table, or the importance of tableware. Any thoughts about how that changes as we get into a post-COVID world? And, how do we go back to normal? Are some of these things here to stay, or do some of them go away once we're back to normal?
I think it's a combination. I think some of the buying habits we've had, where we're going to do more online and we're going to do, the curbside pickup, and those are definitely going to stay. It's clear that consumers are enjoying cooking and baking and they're going to want to entertain at home. Maybe it'll be smaller groups, you know, things like that. I think there's a confidence that people have learned that they can do new things. They've tried new skills, and there's a pride that goes along with it. So I think that'll help some of this stick. But I do think at the end of the day, we have to be cognizant of, you know, are consumers looking for different cuisines? Do they want help in doing that? How are they going to stay safe? How are they going to respect the people that they're working with and trust them to meet those goals and with sustainability and diversity and inclusion and things like that? How do they represent me and who I am? I think that'll come into play too.
I'm thinking about that high percentage of people that said they were looking forward to getting back to visiting people in their homes or having people into their own home. And remember, there are a lot of us who haven't been vaccinated yet, but there are a ton of us who have. Anybody who's over, I can't remember what the cutoff is, either 60 or 65, has been vaccinated. And according to the CDC, we can get together. I'm looking for dinner parties, small dinner parties, very intimate, of people over 60 or 65 to start trending right now. And by the way, when it comes to outdoor spaces, this has been a crescendo that's been going on for more than a decade. More and more people heading outside. I think that there will be some long-term effects in which people say, I know that we can all be inside, but I also know I'm safer outside where there's fresh air and the wind blows and all of that. So I think we'll see more outdoor entertaining. And remember that the categories of outdoor rugs and lighting and all of that, if we were to think about that bell curve for trend, we have just finished the first 25% of that. We have a long way to go.
All right, well, we are out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. Michelle and Leanne, thank you so much for your time, for your insights, for, you know, just for being with us today, and for all these wonderful examples and thoughts to take away. Michelle, one question before we go, I apologize. You mentioned a link to a survey. Would you like me to just gather up the folks who have asked for that and communicate that separately back to you?
Yes, if anyone's asked for it, sure, send that to me and we'll get something out to them this week.
Okay, if anyone else is looking for it, you can go ahead and email spring@housewares.org to make that request, and we will curate that over here and get in touch with Michelle to get the link to that survey. So again, thank you ladies so much. I want to thank Jura, our sponsor. There's some contact information here on the final slide if anyone has an interest in getting in touch with Jura. But thank you again, and I hope to see everyone at additional Connect Spring sessions this week.
Thanks so much.